Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue a new chapter from the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. Only a few more chapters left, guys and gals, and then it'll wrap up this entire book here. This one though has to do with a fascinating subject matter, one that I think I'm actually talking about for the first time here on my channel. The strange case involving UFO healings. So you know how there's always all these abduction stories and people going through these horrific changes and circumstances because of their abductions. Well, in this case, this chapter will actually focus on good things, like apparently these abductions leading to people being cured of various illnesses and then other beneficial factors. So let's go ahead and let's share this part here, part 1 of chapter 11. The title is again UFO Healings, and the first segment is called The Strange Case of Dr. X. So here's what it says. In some respects, the image that has grown in the public mind of evil gray aliens abducting human beings and conducting hideous biological experiments on them is somewhat misleading. It is increasingly becoming apparent that quite the opposite is frequently the case. Many abduction researchers have cases on their files of people who have apparently been cured of various illnesses after a close encounter of the fourth kind. Ironically enough, the most famous incident involved a man who to this day has diligently preserved his anonymity. He is known only as Dr. X. His experiences are remarkable in research context because his insistence on absolute anonymity allowed investigators, most notably the great French ufologist Amy Michel, to conduct their examination of both the initial encounter and subsequent developments in isolation from the prying eyes of the press. In the late 1960s, Dr. X, a highly respected biologist, was living with his wife and 14-month-old son in the countryside in the south of France. Late on the evening of November 1st to 2nd, 1968, the 30-year-old doctor was awakened by the cries of his son. The time was 4 a.m. Dr. X got out of the bed and went to see what was disturbing the boy. He could only walk with great difficulty owing to a leg injury he had sustained while chopping wood 3 days earlier. The wound had been a serious one. When his axe slipped, it had ruptured an artery in his lower leg, causing an internal hemorrhage and resulting in a hematoma, a pocket of accumulated blood under the skin. On the afternoon of November 1st, a physician had examined the leg and found that the wound had not healed, the swelling and pain had not subsided, and they were still a serious problem for Dr. X. Making his way to his son's bedroom, he noted that a thunderstorm was brewing, which might have disturbed the baby. When he entered the room, he saw his son standing in his crib and gesturing towards the window. Through the closed shutters, flashes of lightning could be seen. As he took his baby's water bottle and refilled it, it suddenly occurred to Dr. X that no sound of thunder followed the lightning flashes. Although it was raining very hard and he could clearly see them through those closed shutters. And so he gave his son the refilled water bottle, which seemed to satisfy the boy, and was about to return to bed when he heard the sound of another shutter rattling in the wind somewhere else in the house. The troublesome shutter was in the upstairs room, and after struggling upstairs, Dr. X opened the window to secure it. It was then that he realized the flashes of light were not caused by lightning. In astonishment, he looked out across the landscape to the south of the house, which was built on the side of a hill, at two silvery disc-shaped objects hovering in the distance. Each object shed a deep red light from its base, and each had a vertical antenna on top and a horizontal antenna extending from its side. As they slowly moved together across the rain-soaked countryside, further into the doctor's field of vision, each cast a cylindrical beam of bright white light onto the valley below. At roughly 1 second intervals, this light increased in intensity as an apparent electrical discharge flashed from the vertical antenna of one object through its hull and then across to the second object. The two objects then began to approach the house. Dr. X was able to ascertain this by watching the path taken by the light cylinders across the ground and presently their horizontal antenna touched the flashing, and so the flashing ceased and they merged into then a single object. As the doctor continued to watch, utterly awestruck, rooted at the spot by the open window, this single object continued its approach to the house, still casting its cylinder of intense light upon the valley floor. It then began a strange series of maneuvers, flipping on one end and then turning on its horizontal axis until it appeared as a bright circle hanging eerily in the drizzling night. The light cylinder that had illuminated the valley floor now shone with all of its intensity upon the window at which Dr. X was standing, bathing his face in its unearthly glow. At that point, there was a loud bang, and the object vanished, leaving only a white glow that was gradually dispersed by the wind. As that too vanished, a single stream of light shot upwards into the sky and exploded high above the valley. Although still in shock, Dr. X's scientific training came to lore, and he immediately sat down and began to make sketches of what he had seen, accompanied by a detailed set of notes on the exact sequence of events. When he had completed this task, he returned to his bedroom, woke his wife, and told her what had happened. She was nonplussed, to say the least, by this strange story until she noticed something that to her must have been even more astonishing than her husband's notes and sketches. The swelling in his leg had completely disappeared. When she excitedly pointed this out, it occurred to Dr. X that the pain had likewise gone. Although miraculous in of itself, the disappearance of the painful hematoma was not the only apparent result of Dr. X's strange encounter. 10 years before, in the Algerian War, he had been badly injured in a mine explosion. His skull had been fractured, and the left hemisphere of his brain had been severely damaged. He had slipped into a coma and subsequently suffered several months of partial paralysis, which considerably weakened the muscles in the right side of his body. However, in the days that followed his encounter with the UFOs, these debilitating after effects of his battle injury also disappeared. After a lengthy conversation of his experience, Dr. X and his wife returned to bed, and although she had difficulty sleeping, he immediately entered a deep slumber. He began to talk in his sleep, which was unheard of for him, and his wife took notes of what he was saying. Much of what he was saying referred to his encounter, and at one point he mumbled, "Contact will be reestablished by falling down the stairs on November 2nd. Dr. X slept until 2 o'clock the following afternoon. Although he felt extremely well when he awoke, he had no memory whatsoever of the events of the previous night. When his wife showed him the notes and sketches he had made, he was both surprised and alarmed. The prophecy he had uttered while asleep was fulfilled when later that afternoon he tripped and fell down the stairs in the living room. He landed heavily, bumped his head, and suddenly regained his memory of his encounter. On November 8th, 6 days after Dr. X's initial UFO experience, he was visited by Amy Mitchell, whom he knew socially and who found him tired and depressed. He had also lost weight and was experiencing abdominal cramps. Later that day, he experienced a urinating itch on his abdomen, which was accompanied by a red rash in the shape of a triangle. A dermatologist examined the rash, which intrigued him so much that he expressed a wish to present the case to the French Academy of Medicine. However, fearful that the cause might become known to the public, thus putting his reputation at risk, Dr. X persuaded the dermatologist not to do so. On the night of November 13th, Dr. X had a vivid dream of a flying disc and a triangle. Amy Mitchell had wondered whether the triangular rash around the doctor's navel might have been some kind of psychosomatic phenomenon. However, this theory had to be discarded when a triangular rash subsequently appeared on the baby's stomach. Although Dr. X's leg wound healed completely and he was never again troubled by his war injury, the mysterious triangular rash occurred again and again in the years that followed and was even recorded on film in 1986. A profound change in his outlook on life also occurred, a shift towards a spiritual worldview that was shared by his wife. This alteration was totally out of character for them and mystified both their friends and family who, like the rest of the world, were still unaware of what had happened on that rainy evening on November 1st, 1968. Both Dr. X and his wife felt an ever increasing appreciation of life and its totality, the eternal cycle of living and dying, the machinery of the universe itself, became the center of their consciousness. Not only did they empathize with the mysteries of reality, those mysteries apparently took up residence in their home. Poltergeist activity began to occur, and Dr. X experienced an episode of uncontrollable levitation, accompanied by an inner journey to distant places. At times, it seemed that non-human entities were present in the house, and clocks and electrical devices were affected by an unknown agency. Then that's it. Let's go ahead and let's stop this part 1, chapter 11 of the theme UFO healings from the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. Let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. So for starters, this first segment, The Strange Case of Dr. X, definitely presented what the theme of the chapter is going to be. In this case, there are encounters with aliens/UFOs, and they're going to cause something to be healed. In the case of Dr. X, he had that serious leg wound that was caused only a few days earlier from that encounter, meaning that he had some kind of pocket of accumulated blood under his skin. It was causing intense pain on his end that wasn't subsiding. There was also swelling. And then there was also other indications that the wound was not healing. And then after this experience, after that bright light, after those two UFOs merged into one, came to his window, flashed that light, and then dissipated, all of a sudden it was healed. How do you explain that, right? How does that happen in the manner of like an instant when considering all those days before, nothing had occurred? And then on top of that, and then he had those telltale signs involving those triangles, those rashes that look like triangles appearing on both his body and then also on the body of the baby. There was some great visuals too when I was reading this information, just visualizing in my mind, seeing those UFOs come about in the countryside, going up to his house that happened to be on the side of a hill, and then seeing those lightnings that those UFOs were causing. It must have been quite a sight, and he was pretty much the only one to have seen it there. And then as far as the rest of the chapter, it's a shame because the very last paragraph of that segment highlighted how there was not only poltergeist activity, but also non-human entities in the house. And then these other type of weird phenomena involving levitation and clocks and electrical devices going all wacky. One makes one wonder what was happening on. Was he seeing shadow people? Was something else happening in terms of possession? What about the poltergeist? Does that mean there were hauntings there? I didn't like it how it ended just like that. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like there was a lot of good information right there in those last couple of minutes. Far too exciting stuff to just end it like that. But it did. But in any case, let me know what you guys think. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.